From Carolla One Studios in Glendale, California, this is the Adam Carolla Show. Adam's guest today, best-selling authors and the hosts of No Stupid Questions, Angela Duckworth and Stephen Dubner. With Gina Grad on news, Bald Bryan on sound effects, and Dave Dameshek's here for good sports. And now, Kanye's VP pick, Adam Carolla.
Yeah, get it on. Got to get it on. No choice but to get on a mandate. Get it on. Thanks for tuning in, and thanks for sharing. We love that about you. Right, Gina Grad?
That's right.
Handball, Brian?
The motherfucker.
People were asking me about my look before the show. I was explaining I had makeup applied to me yesterday by Nate Adams, the man who co-directs all the docs, which was I was slated to do Tucker Carlson, and hair and makeup is very catch can these days. Sometimes they're there, sometimes they're not. Sometimes there's provide your own. And if you guys want to know how life works in general, it works like this. You don't need to wear makeup, but you do need to wear makeup if the other person you're on screen with is wearing makeup. Mm-hmm. And you don't need your teeth whitened, but you do need your teeth whitened if you're sitting in between two people who have had their teeth whitened. And you don't
Kelly Ripa and Ryan Seacrest.
Right. And you don't need a publicist unless other people have publicists and are now jockeying to get their people on your show and you not on that show. You actually need all these things to ward off and fight others more than you actually need it yourself.
It's an arms race.
Yes. And so if you're on TV and you don't wear makeup, you will look weird because the host has been professionally made up. So I was informed that there was no hair and makeup for yesterday's Tucker Carlson appearance. So Nate, who is, I don't know if you guys love this quality in people as much as I do, but just a kind of he's just one of these guys that if the car's broken down, he'll jump out and start pushing. You know, he just drops stuff and jumps on stuff. And I just went over to the other shop 10 minutes before I was leaving to the remote studio to do Tucker Carlson. I said, Nate, where's our powder puff? And he's like, hold on. And he sat me down and he just like faced toward the light. And then he was like patting and pounding, he's doing his thing. And then he complimented me. He said, your skin looks good. I said, well, I've been going for a lot of while. I look out for what I eat. Yes, Brian.
Sure.
I would imagine just by virtue of directing so many documentaries and interviewing so many people, he's become somewhat adept at just applying makeup on the fly just as needed. He's not an expert, of course. It's sort of the jack of all trades, master of none. Like that's the guy you want to hang out with, is the guy. I don't need a car mechanic for a friend, or I don't need to be a car mechanic. I just need to know how to hook up the jumper cables for when the car, the battery dies. You don't need to be a makeup artist. You need to be able to like make it look competent and passable.
Yeah, and he's the kind of guys like pulling your collar and doing the lint thing on your lapel and kind of straightening out and pulling the shirt down that bunches up, and he's just that guy. So he powdered me up, and
he's the mom.
I gelled my own hair and was off to Tucker. I went.
Now I do have a question. You said this was yesterday?
Yes.
Well, it's not a question, actually. It's more of a comment. You broke the cardinal female makeup rule. You slept in your makeup!
I rinsed myself. I rinsed myself before I went to bed because I, not so much the makeup, but the hair gel. When my hair gets gelled up, it feels kind of crispy. For lack of a better term, a little crunchy, and so I did the warm water rinse. Yes, Brian.
One subject we've not broached in terms of your hygiene or what you do to your skin. Do you wear sunblock because you do go to the beach a little bit? You go in the sun, no?
No, I never use sunblock. Although I do use, I always try to put on like a big brim hat or something like that before I hit the bricks. I don't not use sunblock because I'm fundamentally against sunblock. I'm just too lazy to use sunblock, although I do believe everything has, nothing is free. You spraying it all over your kids and then inhaling it or whatever chemicals going onto their skin. And there's going to be something that has to do with overuse of sunblock or something. There's going to be some vitamin D deficiency or something that your skin isn't doing that it should be doing. I know dermatologists and doctors they were kind of nuts about it about 15 years ago. Now they're kind of trying to thread the needle where they're like, well, you do need vitamin D, so you have to get in the sun a little bit, but you don't overdo it. So they backed off. The accelerator on sunblock was sort of pedal to the metal. Now they're kind of feathering it a little bit.
I was told by a doctor you should have 20 minutes outside in the sun every day with no sunblock for the vitamin D.
Which, remember, 15 years ago, it was, I don't care if you're walking to your mailbox. You put on that sunblock before you leave the whatever.
Wake up, brush your teeth, put on sunblock.
Yeah. Brush your teeth with the sunblock.
Right.
And
too safe.
It's also, it's like a little counterintuitive that the sun is bad for you. I mean, everyone knows too much and whatever. So I just bought a floppy hat with like that sort of Lawrence of Arabia flap hanging off the back, and I put on the floppy hat and take a hike. I just got another article just from a doctor turned, I guess, journalist who just put this tweet out. A little more interesting than the normal, you don't need shampoo article I read you guys twice a year. This one's a little more in depth, but it's on the same subject because he's talking about your skin, and he's talking about your skin being a big vital part of your big organ and a big vital part of the flora and fauna of your body. But Dawson's eating, what are you eating, Dawson?
Brie on a French bread loaf.
Wow.
Ooh la la.
When did Jack in the Box start offering?
I don't know.
Is it deep fried?
You got a lot of range.
Dawson picks his teeth with the baguette.
It's one of my favorite sandwiches.
All right.
Sounds great.
It sounds very good.
All right. Doctor suddenly quit showering and gave his skin a new lease on life. Some 5 years ago, James Hamblin gave up showering. He tossed the shampoo and conditioner. He quit soap altogether, except for hand washing. He stopped using deodorant, moisturizer, exfoliant, and every other personal care product. He still rinses himself, for example, after a run, and occasionally gets his hair wet. But for all intents and purposes, Hamblin is walking among us as an unclean man. Hamblin, a doctor-turned-journalist, moved to New York from L.A. 5 years ago and found himself living in a tiny studio apartment. As a part of an existential audit, Hamblin considered all the things he might do without. Much like our digestive tract, our skin is home to trillions of crucial bacteria, and the book posits, I guess he wrote a book. Yeah, it's the inquiry of his new book. There we go. Book posits that scrubbing ourselves daily with cleaning agents destroys or upsets that important microbiome that could likely lead to worse health outcomes.
So it's interesting because we were starting to understand this about the gut, that we need this variety going on inside our gut, and it needs exposure to things. But we're starting to realize your skin is where a lot of stuff lives as well. And I think we're all kind of learning that it's not the avoiding of everything, it's more the exposure early and often in small doses to kind of get your body acclimated to it. Sorry, keep going.
Well, like you alluded to earlier, what I've been told, the skin is the largest organ in the body. It's one continuous organ.
That's right.
It goes on to say our increasingly clean way of living, washing often, staying mostly indoors, eating sterile processed food, may confuse our immune system. For example, allergies, eczema, asthma, condition thought to be linked to autoimmune disorders, could be partly a result of not enough exposure to environmental pathogens, especially in infancy. It's taboo to be not be what's considered clean, but for his part, Hamblin is not advocating everyone give up showering. just say begin to question the rituals that are considered a necessity.
Well, there's interesting stuff like, why so many kids have asthma now, and why there's more there. Sorry, in that article I want you to get to, Dawson, but why are so many kids with asthma? Or I've always said, like, why does everyone have peanut allergies? Where'd all the allergies come from? How's it possible? First off, it's counterintuitive because you go, we are refining our society. We're getting cleaner. We're getting more sterile. We're spending more time indoors. Why are allergies going up? It seems like we have less exposure. Well, now do the math. As everything, as the windows get triple paned and as the HEPA filters are scrubbing all the air and as the Purell is flying around, then why are so many kids suffering from allergies now? And when we were kids, didn't seem I barely existed. I
never came up.
I didn't know. Also, I've always had my sort of homespun experience of all the guys I work construction with, like the poor dudes, they had no seasonal allergies. They had no food allergies. I always said, you go on a food run, you don't ask them what they want or if they're lactose intolerant or whatever. They were tolerant to everything. They were intolerant to paying for the food, but if you were paying, they could tolerate anything. And you would just bring back whatever and whenever. And you would go to McDonald's or Taco Bell, whatever. It didn't matter if there was cheese. There was nothing. There's nothing. Just bring it home. They would all eat it sitting on a pile of drywall. So everyone, and I haven't told you guys about this aspect of my life, but I spent a considerable amount of my childhood in dirt. I dug forts. I dug like tons of underground forts. I didn't have games or video games or everything was outdoors. Indoors, there was no air conditioning, so it was too fucking hot in the summer. Outdoors was no money, but we could have dirt clod fights. So it was a lot of forts, like underground forts and tunnels and things like that. Lots of like literally I would dig a trench and then put a piece of wood over the top of it and then put dirt over the top of the wood, and I'd have like a little underground cave. Pop Warner football from age 7, which is just doing wind sprints and on your belly and on your feet and up downs. And we used to even do, you want to talk about exposure. We do this thing, Brian, I don't know if you remember it from your coaching days, but we do this horrible rocking thing where you lay on your belly on the grass, you take your hands and you clasp them behind you at the small of your back, you kick your feet up and you literally rock back and forth like a rocking horse.
You hog tie yourself.
You hog tie yourself and you rock. Yeah. Tons of collisions and contact with other dudes, sweat flying. I mean, that started at 7. It was all dirt, no antibiotics. Yes, Brian.
Did you, in your younger days, did you ever practice on baseball infield? Because we did in high school, because we were the JV team, and the varsity team practiced on the ice field, and we practiced on the fucking infield dirt.
Yeah, that whole North Hollywood High was all dirt, like all the time. But sorry, Dawson, finish her off.
In 2016, researchers published a study in New England Journal of Medicine that found an Amish community in Indiana had 4 times lower rates of asthma and 6 times fewer allergies than a genetically similar Hutterite community in South Dakota. The key difference the researchers found was that the Amish grew up having daily interactions with animals and soil on the farm. And there could be other benefits. A recent University of California, San Diego study found that mice cleaned of skin bacteria were more susceptible to skin cancer. Texas A&M researchers discovered that they could ward off mosquitoes by modifying the bacteria on someone's skin. Or those microscopic mites that live in our pores, they probably eat dead skin, likely helping to exfoliate. He says the skin biome science is just emerging, but one thing is certain. Acceptance will mean overcoming hundreds of years of societal messaging about what it means to be clean.
God, I used to watch all those commercials about the no more tears, lather, rinse, and the kid in the tub. And I'd see, like, I would see when my kids were 1.5, like, Lynette would be slathering on all the moisturizer and just rubbing it all out. It was like, oh, it's so good for them. And it's like, I get it. You are brainwashed just watching all these commercials for all this stuff that you have to put on yourself. And it's, by the way, it's like, hey, if you're not doing this to your kid, you don't love your kid. Like you're abusing your kid if you're not dousing them in suds, constantly scrubbing and rubbing and not letting them, don't go out there, put that down, or don't put that near your mouth or whatever it is. Turns out nature knows what it's doing. And I think a lot of this stuff is all about, I think a lot of it is about exposure. And I think there's a physiological exposure and there's also kind of a emotional exposure. You need that kind of bully. You need to be able to negotiate with the bully. You need to kind of know the bully's patterns and how to kind of stay out of the way of the bully, not erase the bully or get rid of the bully or never give the kid the chance to kind of deal with that adversity a little bit. That part where you show up and you're new and you're not that popular and one of the kids is an asshole. You have to kind of win them over a little bit and figure it out. Maybe tell a joke or stand your ground. Yes, Brian.
My story exactly, except for winning them over.
That's right. All right. Let's see. We have Sean McCloskey, who's on hold. Did you find Sean, Max Pata?
He actually reached out to us.
All right. And he was involved. Oh, hi, Sean.
Hey, Adam. Hey, guys.
Hey,
You are where right now, Sean?
I'm in New Orleans.
And you've been working or have been working. Well, describe the project you're working on.
Yeah. So, and before we get started, I just want to say one thing. Sarah Sibley, I had a big crush on you in high school, but you turned me down for the prom and said I wasn't cool enough. Well, now I'm on the Adam Carolla show and you can kiss my ass.
Yeah.
You were right. And you've been proven right.
That's right.
love it.
All right. So I always love that. So yeah, let's talk about murder now. So I manage the murder reduction strategy out of New Orleans, out of the mayor's office here from 2013 to 2018. So for 5 years here.
And
so
New Orleans was there are places that are sort of quietly high in murder, like St. Louis, maybe Baltimore. We always talk about Chicago, but there are places that are per capita higher than Chicago. I think St. Louis is, maybe Baltimore. I don't know. How's New Orleans, or how was it?
Yeah, so New Orleans has historically been one of the most violent cities. So we started the strategy in 2012. Our murder rate per capita every year from 2000 to 2011 was the highest of any city in the country every single year. We had 200 murders in 2011. After implementing the strategy, last year we had 119 murders. It's the lowest number of murders in 50 years, and we had the biggest reduction of any of the 20 most violent cities in the murder rate drop.
Well, I know this isn't possible, but we live in Los Angeles, in the city with the most traffic in the world. And considering I live in a nice neighborhood, I would swap those two stats just to commute a little faster. Again, I'm not in the inner city. Maybe this is something I should be just thinking and not saying. So you reduced it what percent?
Yeah, so we had 200 murders when we started. We had 119 last year. The murder rate drop's actually bigger because New Orleans has grown a lot in that time. It's still recovering from Katrina, so it's been about a 50% reduction in the murder rate over that time.
And how did you achieve that?
Yeah, so some background on just murder in New Orleans. 90% of murder victims are African American, 90% are males, 90% are guns. 80% of the time, the victim knows the perpetrator, so these aren't random. And the biggest proportion is African American males aged 16 to 25. And so we designed our strategy of 30 initiatives spanning prevention, intervention, enforcement, and rehabilitation, specifically targeting that group of 16 to 25-year-old African American males.
Yeah, so, in this new world order where we're not allowed to talk about such things, it's like, if you'd like to reduce a problem, then you're going to have to figure out who's involved with that problem that you want to address. If it happens to be black, then it happens to be black, but it also happens to be males. So, and it also happens to be males of a certain age, but you have to have that conversation in order to address, well, really any problem that you're trying to address. And it's true, you know, black people kill black people and white people kill white people. That's kind of how it works, but I think white people do it at a lower rate, and that's what we're talking about. So you find the group that is doing the most killing or is the most affected by this, and then you focus your attention on that group, which makes sense.
Yeah, we have limited resources, limited time, and so we need to focus on the group that can have the biggest impact. And so, we started with prevention. We started with intervention and enforcement because we literally had to stop the bleeding. But then we really moved to prevention because we recognize that, look, the only way you can have a long-term reduction is to focus on prevention. So that's your parenting, your education, recreation. And so half of our initiatives were really prevention. And
go ahead, Bryan.
So you mentioned you had a 30 item action list of how to do the intervention, prevention. Two-part question. What were some of the more successful, bullet points you guys installed, and what ended up being, let's say, outside the box, or even controversial, or things that were a little unusual?
They steered away from the phrase bullet point. They would say highlighted. But I get it. Go ahead.
One of the big insights we had on the enforcement side was that New Orleans actually did have a gang problem. People didn't think we did because we don't have structured gangs like the Bloods and the Crips. What we do is we have these small groups, though, of 5 to 10 guys who would associate together and do criminal enterprise. And so we created a new gang unit specifically focused on them. It was multi-agency, so police, FBI, DEA, the U.S. Attorney. And we really focused targeted enforcements on that group. We indicted 15 gangs and 140 individuals from there. But we also gave them a chance to change their life and get out of that lifestyle. We coordinated a network of service providers and we went to them and said, look, we're going to crack down on you like no other, but if you want to change your lifestyle, we're going to give you everything you can need. If you need job training, mental health, substance abuse support, come do that. And we had just as many people take us up on that, and they left the lifestyle to get regular jobs and be more productive. And so we saw a 50% reduction in gang violence very quickly from that.
Cool.
It's when you talk about this stuff, it all feels like it lands somewhere between no duh and no shit. Like I don't get why these problems seem so unsolvable for big cities and modern eras. The information is there, the data is there. Maybe the political will isn't there, but why is this is all so solvable, and you're never going to get all of it. You're just going to reduce it. It's always going to exist. I mean, no one's going to live in a society without murder or homicides. But if you're going to live in a society with a very high rate of murder or homicides, then you don't want to live in that society. I don't know. It's the same with drunk driving and, fatalities per million miles traveled on the highways. It's going to exist. Let's see what we can do to shrink it down. And by the way, have you given this information to other cities as well?
Yeah, a lot of cities came to visit us to see how we were doing things. And so, we met with Memphis and Detroit and other random cities to kind of share what we were doing. It's not a secret sauce. It is, it's simple, but it's not easy. Like, it takes a lot of willpower and a lot of effort and project management, but like the solutions, it's not it's not like there's some magical solution that only we know about. It's just focusing on it and executing it well.
Well, and it seems like you found that perfect balance of carrot and stick, saying like,
right,
if you want to keep doing what you're doing, there's going to be consequences. And if you want a way out, we can help you with that too. It's your choice.
Definitely. Yeah. I think prevention is, also so important, because if you arrest these guys, more people are going to take their place. So the gold standard for prevention, the CDC, Centers of Disease Control, they've identified 31 risk factors so the more of these risk factors a young person has, the more likely they are to be involved with violence. 10 of these risk factors are about parenting. So it's things like low parental involvement, low emotional attachment to parents, poor family functioning, poor monitoring and supervision of children, inconsistent discipline. That's just half of them. And so the way to sustainably reduce it over time is you need to reduce these risk factors in young people. And so they don't grow, it's a lot harder to get them out of the lifestyle once they're in it.
Yeah. It's vexing to me that here we are all these years later, because I used to see this, because, I had a very unique perspective, because I hosted Loveline for 10 years and I just talked to screwed up teenagers for a decade. And so I started hearing about, now they weren't gangbangers per se, or it was a different form of banging they were involved with. But either way, every time I heard about all the ills that were coming from these young people, it was always the families were a mess. They were broken. They were fractured off. Dad wasn't around, blah, blah, blah. So I caught on early and often. It was about the family. It was about the dad not abandoning the family. There wasn't any racial component to it back then, because these were mostly just white kids who called in, and I would complain about how shitty their families were and I want to know where their dad was. So it wasn't injected with everything. Everything is now race related, but this had nothing to do with that, because it was, we were on K-Rock, and, our average listener was 15-year-old chick from Orange County, California. So we didn't, it wasn't a lot of inner city, urban-y, this or that, but it was still the same conclusions: absent dads, broken families, the kids going down this path that we wanted to avoid. And it's the same remedy. It's the same. It's like, I always say diet and exercise, but diet and exercise, you don't give diet and exercise advice to a young black man or a young white man, but something different to an Asian man or a Hispanic man. It's just fucking diet and exercise. I don't get why we're not more willing to speak about this as a society, or why this is a fucking hate crime when you bring this shit up. But if you don't, then we're just going to have more folks that are super young and dead in the street. And it's a pretty solvable problem. Sean and his team made a drastic reduction in it by the way of a balance of being like proactive and community and carrot and stick, as Gina said, and showing a strong show of force and consequences. It's not one or the other. It's kind of a marriage of both. And speaking of marriage, just like the mom and the dad sort of at home, Sorry, Sean, go ahead.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I will admit, of all the things we did, I think parenting and family is one of the hardest, maybe the hardest to impact. One is they're just harder. It's harder to reach parents. Like, people like doing programs with kids because we know where they are. They're in school. We can reach them easily, and we have all this data on how they're doing and which ones need the most help. Parents are harder to reach. A lot of the programs are in-home visit types, and then it's hard to convince them to take the help. Like, people don't want to admit that they're bad parents, and the ones who are willing to take the help are not necessarily the ones who need it the most. And so it is hard to do, but it's obviously extremely important. And so, you have to do it, but it is challenging.
Sean, can I give a plug for you or your foundation or your community, or if people want to learn more about it, can I send them a direction? Let's see. Oh, I have it here. Sorry. Where is there a website? Is there a place where people could get more information?
Yeah, so I left the mayor's office when the last mayor left office in 2018. So there's a new mayor that we were term limited, and so I would just look up they're carrying over a lot of the stuff. So I would just look up the New Orleans violence prevention, and there's tons of information. There's tons of stories all over the internet about the work we did.
Well, please go full Johnny Appleseed with your plan to
spread the message far and wide.
Thank you, Sean McCloskey. We appreciate you joining us.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you. All right. So let's see. We'll do a spot. We'll do the news after the spot, right, Max Zapata? You know, Max Zapata, I know everyone zooms in, but I feel like the connection is, I think people should just call in. Is it a better connection when you just call in? No? No, you don't know what I'm talking about? I feel like when I talk to someone on a cell phone, I got a much higher batting average than the zoom in. I mean, you don't get the visual part.
Right.
But the I don't know, the internet can be kind of dicey.
I like the audio better on Zoom, but if you prefer it, I mean, we can do calls. It's fine.
But don't you think Sean's was kind of dicey?
Sean was in a house with big ceilings.
Yeah, it was an echo.
I asked him to get in the smallest room he could possibly be in. Like Bryan and Gina are in nice, quiet rooms, but what we were hearing is a lot of airspace surrounding where he was.
But didn't you feel like his connection was a little...
His connection wasn't great. I agree.
Okay. Don't you feel like it's a better audio when you're over the phone?
It depends. I mean, there's certain guests where I think it really did help that you saw them as well.
Yeah. I'm just talking pure audio, though. I feel like pure audio, I got a better batting average on the phone.
Yeah, but we've had some pretty bad phone lines as well. I think.
All right, thank you. Moving forward. Madison Reed, thank you.
Okay.
It took a while. High ceilings, boss. All right, working from home, staring at your coworkers, hair's turning gray, beard's turning gray, thinking about getting a little coloring in? Well, you're not alone. Madison Reed Mister Gray, blending natural color for your hair and beard. And I've seen the before and after shots. They look spectacular. No shoe polish look here, my friends, and maybe just want a little more pepper and a little less salt. Madison Reed Mister makes it easy. Find your color match. Just go on the website and work it out. They have all sorts of selections on there. Quick, easy. Just apply the color gel to the dry hair, then the activator. Wait 10 minutes, rinse, and there you go. Bob's your uncle. You look fantastic. Right, Dawson?
Go to MadisonReedMr.com. That's MadisonReedMR.com. And use code Adam for 10% off, plus free shipping on your first box. Again, that's code Adam.
All right, let's take a quick break. We'll come back. We'll do the news with Bald and Gina right after this.
Give me the news with Grad. News with Gina Grad. Breaking viral. All those crazy Trump tweets. Give me news with Gina Grad. Trouble in the Middle East. Celebrity drunk meltdowns. Need news with Gina Grad.
The news with Gina Grad.
Well, speaking of all those crazy Trump tweets, President Donald Trump called wearing a mask patriotic in a tweet Monday. We have a picture. We posted a photo of himself wearing one, a basic precaution. Health experts, of course, have been urging Americans to take in the U.S. for a while now. Trump tweeted a black and white photo of him in a mask saying, "There is nobody more patriotic than me, your favorite president." So remember, he held a rally in Tulsa, Oklahoma last month where basically nobody was in a mask. But Trump says he's all for masks, even though he does not plan to issue a national mask mandate, according to Forbes. Trump seemed to, for a long time, want to avoid being seen publicly in a mask. He said, "I'm not going to give the press, that kind of field day." But he is wearing one now. He wore it for the visit to the Walter Reed National Military Medical Center. So maybe getting a few more people on board.
He should wear an Uncle Sam outfit. He should just switch.
Yes.
Just start right now.
Just dive in.
I don't think it would lose him a vote. I'm not sure if it would get him a vote. But if he just started dressing like Uncle Sam, he should just fucking dive in right now and do that. I would.
You know
I would
what?
like that. Yes.
I think you're right. And you know what? you could do a bundle. You could do the MAGA hat. And I can't believe they didn't think of this before. A face mask where it's Donald Trump's like mouth and nose. Have you seen those? You can do like smiles. Or
yeah.
Cat mouths
I want
or whatever.
Rob Lowe, but yeah. Well, he could do Uncle Sam's beard, right?
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Right? He should do that. I'm just fixing to get on a plane and go to Texas, so I'm going to have my mask. How often are you supposed to cycle those masks? I got the disposable ones. Every time.
Do you have like the blue paper?
I got like the blue papery one. It's been on my car seat since this thing started, I think.
Actually, that's okay because if it's sitting outside, the sun probably helps if it's sitting on your car seat.
Yeah, well, it's going to. The greatest disinfectant, sunlight, is now hitting my mask. So I'm going to go test the mask out on a flight too. And by the way, it's so weird. I'm flying to Wisconsin. I got like a Snap-on tool thing to do over there, and then I'm going to Chicago. Then I'm going to Texas. We're going to do some live shows there, but. I got a first-class ticket to Wisconsin. Well, it's to Chicago, and then you drive to Wisconsin on, like, United. And I said to Matt D'Andrea, who's going with me, I said, what's first class like these days? And what are we to do with first class? Like, what I used to be, they'd roll out a big cart with champagne and have an ice cream sundae, and first class was first class. Yeah, now it's like, but I told you, everyone's looking for an excuse to cut back in the name of safety. So he was able to figure out whether they provide a snack, but it's unclear what that is. And then I'm like, drinks. Do they have drinks? It's a 4-hour flight. It's first class. We're flying at night. He's like, they don't know. Like he literally called the airline and he said, "Do you have drinks in first class?" And they're like, "Yeah, we don't know." I thought, okay,
Depends.
Yeah,
quite an answer.
You're right. So either way, but I don't know. I feel like in first class we should have drinks, right? Or just I don't know how.
That's why you sit there.
That's why you
it's only
sit
like
there.
8 people.
All right. Anyway.
So a little more Kanye news, and this is, like you said, somewhere between no shit and no duh. TMZ reports that Kanye West has turned on his family in the midst of what they're told is a bipolar episode. The Gossip Blog says that West accused Kim Kardashian of trying to commit him to a mental hospital. In a series of tweets Monday, and I did try to get them, but I believe that they've been deleted. Kanye revealed his wife's plan to get him help just 24 hours after that bizarre, at times incoherent campaign rally in South Carolina. He said, quote, "Kim was trying to fly to Wyoming with a doctor to lock me up like on the movie Get Out because I cried about saving my daughter's life yesterday." He then tweeted out a series of what he calls future fonts. We do have
By
those.
the way, saving your daughter's life when she falls out of a Zodiac boat into a raging river is one thing. Saving your daughter's life by not paying for an abortion is not quite the same thing that heroes are made of. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yes.
Did that happen and Get Out? Did someone fly to Wisconsin to get someone?
No, he's just talking. I'm going to interpret for Kanye West, which is not something I make a habit of, but just being sort of locked in a society where people won't let you be yourself, or you're sort of a hostage to another person's family.
Okay.
I'm not a great parent, but even I wouldn't pontificate over the coin toss of aborting my kids. You know what I mean? Just because it's out there now.
That's between you and your wife.
I don't think Kim was super happy about it.
It's on the internet now. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
At some point, however old your kid is now, they shall be able to understand that that was a decision that was being made. And
batted around.
Yeah, just bandied about a little bit.
Yeah.
But, look, and I fucking mean this. I've said when people say to me, key to a good marriage or a long marriage, and I say 2 TiVos and a lot of square footage, I fucking mean it. There's no doubt. Kim and Kanye, I mean, the over-under on those two had to be 11 months. If they were living in 1,200 square feet worth of apartment in Van Nuys, one of them would be dead by now, right? at the other's hands. I mean, it's the fact that they live in these kind of estates. And the fact that they live in, there's 22,000 square feet of dwelling. I mean, he wouldn't even, when you're at home and you don't even know if your partner's at home or not, the rush for the divorce, it takes a little the pressure off the divorce, the necessity.
Like I theorize, how often are they even under the same roof?
Well, if the roof covers 22,000 square feet of home, then who knows?
It doesn't matter. Yeah.
I mean,
plus having multiple houses.
I have a biggish house, and I'll come home and I'll be like in my office, and I'll be like, "Is Lynette and Sonny, are they in the theater? Like watching? Like where are they?" Either way, when you hear them, and I have lived in probably 600 square foot in Hollywood with a girlfriend and a no bed, a loft, not even a loft, a studio apartment. Everything is so annoying so quickly. Every time someone cooks something, you can smell it while you're laying on your futon. Everything is right in your grill. I think there are multiple residents mixed with tons of travel for work, mixed with tons of square footage, has kept these two lovebirds going as long as they have.
2.5 years. No, it's a little longer than that. But you know what I mean?
Yeah, you can. There's definitely. I know that my parents would probably still be married today if they lived in Calabasas in one of the Kardashian houses. They wouldn't be happy, but they wouldn't have. When you're living in 900 square feet, you got to shit or get off the pot, especially when there's only one pot.
Yep.
So I don't know if you've seen or heard about this new drone, but researchers have developed a new coronavirus-era drone that can disinfect an entire sports stadium within hours, according to Fox News. It's the Aris Fog Company, and they said that the machine utilizes electrostatic technology to sanitize large areas by discharging cleaner through its nozzles, which attach to both ground surfaces and underneath seats and other surfaces like railings.
It's a crop duster.
Basically, yes.
Yeah.
It can spray up to 20 acres per hour. And they say the drone could be used indoors, outdoors, and can clean any area safely. And it will be disinfected 3 minutes after it's sprayed. The company recently tested the drone on Pittsburgh's Highmark Stadium and expects to have all the required certifications by fall.
So it has a hopper that has X amount of liquid
Juice.
Material in it.
Yeah.
It's probably one of those 4-bladed ones.
Yes.
With
Imagine so.
Got the big lifting capacity. And, it's funny. I wasn't talking to you guys about it, but I was talking to Bjorn Lomborg about it, which is battery technology enables this stuff. I used to fly an electric model plane. I won't bore you with all the details, but 15, 20 years ago, the battery pack for that thing was a brick. I mean, it was a brick. Well,
think about the VHS, the video recorders you have to carry around.
Right.
With a certain size for a tape, but a fucking huge battery.
The battery was essentially 6 or 7, maybe even 8 C-cell batteries daisy-chained and shrink-wrapped. So if you can picture the heft of 8 C-cell batteries shrink-wrapped, that's what the batteries. Now, all the planes are electric. All the model planes are electric because they figured the batteries out. They're much smaller. When I first used electric tools, battery-operated power tools, all they had was a drill. They didn't have saws. They didn't have routers. They didn't have all the stuff you have now because they just didn't have the batteries for it. These drones are now all made possible because of this crazy battery technology, and we're getting it with cars as well. So it goes up, and it does that. And this is great until Al-Qaeda gets a hold of it and fills it with mustard gas, and we go full Black Sunday where they fucking fly it over. Oh, yeah.
Pittsburgh. Wasn't that Pittsburgh?
It was a Coliseum, I think, on Black Sunday. Well, we'll look it up. They were playing the Steelers maybe in the Super Bowl. I think it was the Super Bowl. I think it may have been Dallas. And Gina's too young. She doesn't know the fuck we're talking about. But the Dallas Cowboys, I think they were using actual footage from the Dallas Cowboys playing the Pittsburgh Steelers, maybe in the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
But it was the L.A. Coliseum, and then some madman had like hijacked the Goodyear blimp, and they were going to attack the Coliseum with the blimp. I don't know. What do you got, Max? Bet on it?
The Miami Orange Bowl.
Oh, Miami Orange Bowl. Shit.
But it was Super Bowl 10. It was Pittsburgh and I believe Dallas.
Yes. And what's the plot line? They had the Robert Shaw was in it. They got the Goodyear blimp. I'm just telling you, everybody, all this technology, it's awesome, but it's really like it's like a handgun. It's like in the hands of a gangbanger, bad times. In the hands of a good cop, good times.
Chris,
go ahead.
No, I'm sorry. I thought you were done. You paused. Go ahead.
I'll keep going. This with a hopper full of disinfectant, good. Hopper full of sarin gas, taking out the whole fucking stadium. Yes, sorry, go ahead.
I'm looking at the poster for Black Sunday, what I assume is the original poster. It's the Goodyear blimp knocking over a huge bank of lights in the Orange Bowl. The tagline says Black Sunday, tagline, it could be tomorrow. That only applies if it's Saturday.
That's true. That's true.
There's only one day a week that works.
Also,
tomorrow cannot be Black Sunday.
It's also one of those fucking things they used to do on 70s movie posters all the time, which I believe should be illegal, which is put on the poster shit that never happens in the movie. Like they commandeered the Goodyear blimp and they flew it into the stadium, and they're like, oh, but they never knocked over the lighting or anything. They're just, all right, anyway.
The people in the crowd seem very calm for the Goodyear blimp being on top of them.
They don't see it yet.
Yeah, they're watching the play on the field. Anyway, this is going to turn into Black Sunday. Go ahead.
Perfect.
Yep.
So with football season just around the corner at this point, the NFL and Players Union have agreed on a daily COVID-19 testing protocol so that training camps can begin. In a league-wide memo obtained by CNN, the NFL outlines the screening and testing guidelines now in place. Coronavirus testing will begin at the start of training camps and last for 2 weeks. Results from those weeks will dictate if they're going to switch it to every other day, which I think they would rather do, but the players want it every day. Also,
wait a minute. I think I got a new rich man, poor man tested repeatedly for coronavirus. You either work at a slaughterhouse for Hormel and like Arleta where they've had a big breakout, or you're a baller in the NBA or the NFL, right?
Right.
The regular, the middle class guy gets tested once or twice, but it's not like it's not like when you're working at the meat packing place and they've fucking been decimated by it, right?
That's right.
Rich
I think
man,
you're
poor
right.
man.
They also offered the Players Union the opportunity to skip all preseason games, according to a source familiar with negotiations. So, everything looking a little different, but we'll see. The players are like, my wife is pregnant, or, it's not just them. There's really throwing the old wife excuse around, I think, a lot of these guys.
I think some of these guys are really piling on it. Like my wife and then 3 bitches I'm banging. They're all pregnant.
That's right.
Okay.
How am I supposed to keep them safe?
That's right. Sorry.
So Gavin Newsom, the governor here in California, said Monday that hair salons and barbershops could offer services outside now. The announcement provides relief to these salons that closed in March under the stay-at-home orders. They were allowed to reopen for the hottest of hot seconds and then closed again during the new shutdown orders. The new guidance says outdoor services are permitted if patrons and stylists wear masks, meet other safety requirements. The allowed outdoor services include skincare, cosmetology, nails, massage, outdoor massage. Electrology, tattooing, and piercing are not allowed.
This by the way,
outdoors.
This could have saved Bob Kraft a lot of trouble. If he'd just moved that shit outside, we wouldn't even be talking about him right now. You know what I mean?
Bob who?
That's right.
Yeah, that's what he's saying.
Yeah. The barber, I've been into a couple of these places. They have the chairs, they're 6 feet apart. Everyone's wearing a mask. Everyone is spread out. I don't know. I get the indoor crowds, the bars, the honky tonks or something, but the way they did when I went to super cuts or fantastic cuts or sports clip cuts or wherever the hell I did. It was like everything was spread out. It didn't seem like the indoor and the outdoor would have been that impactful. Yes, Brian.
I don't purport to know the science, but the word is that indoors is more dangerous than outdoors. Fine, we can agree on that. I also aerosolizing is a big thing now. Like if you're using the hair dryer or the whatever, getting it into the air is apparently a big thing. That's why I go to physical therapy twice a week. I'm doing exercises and stuff. I'm wearing a mask as required by the clinic. The physician is wearing a mask. Like everyone has to wear a mask. Because you're exhaling, you're breathing.
Are you indoor? Are they doing it indoors?
Yep. Yeah, it's a medical facility, so they take your temperature when you come in and they disinfect everything.
I think they could do that with the hair and whatever. But look, somebody.
Not on a breezy day.
But here's the
fucked up cut.
Also, again, nothing's free, so there's going to be a weird story years from now where it's like, well, what happened to your mom? Killed by a drunk driver. Oh, really? Where was she? She was getting her hair cut. But
wait, what?
Well, she was getting killed by a drunk driver. Guy was
Did the driver drive inside of an establishment?
No. He was in the parking lot of a Gelson's. They have a couple. There's a real estate place there too.
I promise, I'm trying to follow you.
Yeah. Oh no, she was getting a bob. Or maybe she's getting her roots dyed. Anyway, I shouldn't even say dyed. It brings up too many bad memories. But I think the Korean nail lady may have been in a coma as well. She didn't escape unharmed.
Did the driver drive through a mall?
Hard to talk about. No, I know. You're thinking Blues Brothers. No, this guy just had one too many after work. He was a union drywall,er and that's how Mom died. She's getting her hair cut.
Sorry for your loss.
So, I'm just saying, if you got kids out there, before they get their hair cut, hug them. You give them a hug.
Check their underwear.
You hug them. That's right. Sorry.
So here's a different take on the wear a mask or get out of our establishment. A restaurant in Northern California says they won't serve any customers who are wearing a mask. This is according to multiple posts and reviews on Yelp and social media. Social media users posted photos of a sign currently posted outside the Apple Bistro that said no social conditioning, no oxygen deprivation mask, no latex dirty germ spreader. Not required here. This may not be for you.
I'm sure Applebee's is over the moon that the place called Apple Bistro has gone full fucking commando with this shit.
Yeah, they're in El Dorado County.
They're in Placerville, and apologies to our Placerville listeners, although we don't have any because people in Placerville can't figure out how to work an iPhone.
Oh, wow.
First off, how dare you, Brian? I shall inform you that the Ringwald family hails from Placerville, California.
Really?
And I do believe had at least relocated back to Placerville at some point in their career.
I'm actually completely joking. Placerville is a lovely town, I know, because my grandparents lived in Lake Tahoe. They retired there my entire youth, and I would take many trips by car back and forth from the Bay Area to Lake Tahoe. And Placerville was our stop because one of the things that made me a fat kid, there was a place. What was it called? Doesn't matter. They had the best cinnamon rolls. I was a little kid. I would down one the size of my head. They were amazing.
Is this kind of a Springfield
Sweetie
versus
pies.
Shelby?
Sweetie pies. Are they still around?
Were they your
Sweetie Pie's
Shelbyville?
still around, and did the Ringwalds hail from Placerville? I'm almost positive they came from Placerville out to North Hollywood. Certainly.
Wow.
Yeah, up the street. Sorry. And are they
Well, this
back?
place
Is Bob back in Placerville? I think he may be.
You might be thinking of Roseville.
No.
That's near there.
Oh, they were from Placerville. Or maybe
she was born in Roseville. Molly at least was.
Oh, maybe the hospital in Roseville or something. If you lived in Placerville, would that work that way?
Sweetie Pies is open. People of Placerville, you obviously know, but in the surrounding areas, get yourself a cinnamon roll. Those are delightful. Oh, Fat Brian wants them. Look at that.
Oh, man. Pecan. Pecan.
And imagine how big that is.
Oh, so good.
I mean, Bob has been known to play the Placerville Festival, the Ragtime Festival, So
Oh.
Nah.
There's a connection there.
I'm going to say, yeah. Well, I don't know. They always said they're from Placerville, but I guess that's where.
yeah, Bob lives in Placerville now. So near
Okay,
Roseville,
well,
where-
it's my story's
That's
holding.
a strong case.
I'm
Well,
holding
this article
together.
says Bob is blind and now lives in Placerville near Roseville, where he and his wife Adele raised Molly and her two siblings.
Oh, well, maybe they said Placerville like you'd pick the bigger town that someone
Right.
from North Hollywood may have heard of.
Sure.
Like people would, yeah.
I guess so, but I didn't know where either one was, and I called it Plasterville, but that's me.
Yeah,
You're a builder
tiny
through and through.
shitholes, though.
Well, listen, when you move to North Hollywood trying to start a new life, you come from a shithole, believe you me.
Yes, the math checks out.
I'll tell you, man, Adele Ringwald, the mom, speaking of sticky buns, that chick baked her ass off, man. She was a big-time baker, and I loved going over their house because she loved it. You know, the people that bake, the people they live with, most of the time don't appreciate what they do, but the outsiders, like when I 15 and I showed up at that house and she pulled a big strudel out of the oven, I was like, oh, this is good. And she was like, she loved it. She loved to watch me
Just
just
in time.
enjoy the shit out of her baking. Yeah, Adele. Good old Adele.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, that's Molly and Beth's mom.
Well, authorities have taken a Michigan woman into custody after she allegedly made a scene inside of a pizza place. So, according to the reports, after being asked to wear a mask, the suspect flipped off the employees and then attempted to leave. At that point, she reportedly ran over a police officer's foot with her pickup truck. The suspect allegedly became upset after one of the restaurant workers asked her to put on the mask, and Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer issued a mandate on July 10th that requires residents to wear a mask in these indoor places. Nor allegedly responded to the face mask request by sticking her hands underneath the plexiglass barrier, flipping off the employees, and she also kicked another customer that attempted to intervene. So ladies are
Wow.
Oh, boy.
ladies
Shit
are doing
kicking
it for
Karen.
themselves.
Yeah, she looks it. I got to tell you, the look that a lot of women are adopting with the little stud that's kind of above the
Yeah.
lip on one side, making their
Yeah.
face a little asymmetrical, the little stud in the nose. I don't get it. I look at that and it looks like a piece of broccoli on your front tooth when we're eating dinner. Like it I want to flip
Yeah, it's like
it
a
off.
derma piercing where Cindy Crawford's mole would be.
Yeah. I was going to say, on Cindy Crawford looks great. On Chrissy Teigen looked great. On other people,
Well, the whole thing, if a seagull shit on Cindy Crawford's forehead, you'd go, yeah, it works for her. It looks good on Cindy. I don't recommend the seagull shit for others, but for Cindy, it works. All right, let me hit Tommy John. Summer is in full swing. Tommy John's proud to announce their new essentials, guaranteed to redefine comfort no matter how hot it is out there. New hammock pouch, max support for your manhood. Everything is amazing. They have number one customer favorite Second Skin Plus products in the hammock shaped pouch down there for the boys, made from ultra light, breathable, anti-odor air mesh fabric. This stuff's the best. I wear it every single day. I think I was wearing the t-shirt or the undershirt on Tucker yesterday. Ladies, they got the brand new comfort smoothing fabric and bralettes and underwear as well. Breathable, lightweight, accentuates what you love and smooths over what you don't. Thank goodness. It's Tommy John. It's the best, right, Dawson?
Go to TommyJohn. For a limited time, go to TommyJohn.com/Adam to get 20% off your first order. That's TommyJohn.com/Adam for 20% off. TommyJohn.com/Adam.
All right, let's do one more, Gina Grad.
All right. Well, you're going to have to say goodbye to some of your favorite things over at Trader Joe's, or at least the name of some of your favorite things at Trader Joe's.
Yeah.
They're getting rid of product names like Trader Jose's, Arabian Joe's, Trader Giotto's,
Trader Ming.
Yep. That
I am
critics-
so
Yeah.
thick that I was staring at that taco box for 20 minutes going, what's wrong with the thing? It says, I was just reading it as Trader Joe's tacos. I had to look at it and go, oh, Trader Jose's tacos?
Jose.
Yeah.
And the Trader Giotto's pizza.
But
In their defense, which is a pretty flimsy defense, they do it across many product lines, like Gina was saying, like Trader Giotto's for like their olive oil or stuff. Like they do it for all ethnic foods. It was probably a cute little gimmick at the time, but you can't do that now.
They even have Joe San for some of their Japanese stuff.
For the Jewish, for the bagels, it's Trader Josef. It is.
But I don't. Why do we have to sterilize society to the point where it's kind of not interesting anymore? Like, can't we let companies kind of, I don't know, wink and nod and have some fun? I agree. If it's across the board, if it's just for Italian and Jewish and Hispanic, what is that?
The company said, it was just a light, kind of fun thing we were doing. But guess the age. And if you want location for bonus points of the person who is spearheading this campaign, because this is exoticizing other cultures.
I'm going with
recuse yourself.
All right. Well, then I'm going with Adele Ringwald, Placerville, California, age 79.
Couldn't be farther.
What?
A 17-year-old from the Bay Area who's been declared as a rising high school senior and human rights activist.
Oh.
The petition says the Trader Joe's branding is racist because it exoticizes other cultures. It presents Joe as the default normal and the other characters falling outside of it. They are Arabian Joe, Trader Jose, and Trader Joe-san. So they're in the middle. They're in the process of rebranding.
I pray this isn't a dude. Is this young person a dude?
He may have been
Briones Bedell.
Briones.
Anybody's guess. Hold on.
Briones Bedell. Bay Area.
That's a UFC fighter.
I know.
I love that guy.
Or
guy kicks ass.
Weak side tackle on the Ravens. No one's got the blind side like Briones. Jesus.
I wanted to confirm the age, so I looked at a couple different articles, and I'm looking right now, but there's no picture of this
Probably
person.
because he's a minor. They're
17, yeah.
I hope it's a boy, and I hope it's a boy so that we can force him to mate with Greta Thunberg to have the most obnoxious human being on the planet. They'll give birth to the most obnoxious 5-year-old that was ever fucking born.
Precocious.
Oh, god damn. It's just fucking Trader Joe's. They wear like Hawaiian shirts. They're kind of fun. Oh, it's a chick. It's a fucking.
There you go.
It's
She looks like a Kristen Bell type.
Yeah.
She looks just like very perky, blonde, almost that Tracy Flick in Election quality.
Yeah, and I'll tell you the problem. The problem is everyone is listening to young people, which I told people to stop doing a long time ago, but they thought they were the future and whatever. Like, if Briones Bedell says, hey, you know what? I find Trader Joe's, some of the product names to be problematic. The answer shouldn't be, let me get my steno pad, tell me all about it. The answer should be, go back to worrying about the prom, bitch. That should be the answer. Let the adults handle the fucking naming of products at their own stores. Jesus goddamn Christ. All right. It's all your fault for listening to young people and deciding they were the future. They don't know shit. And by the way, when I was 17, nobody should ever listen to me about anything. I didn't know shit either. I wasn't all fucking full of myself like everyone is now. All right. Let's bring it home, Gina Grad.
You got it. I'm Gina Grad, and that's the news.
Gina Grad.
That was the news with Gina Grad.
Last but not least, there's Geico. You want to save an extra 15%? How about you do it on your car insurance, your motorcycle insurance, RV policies? That's 15% on top of the money you could already be saving if you switch over to Geico. So what are you waiting for, man? Never been a better time to switch on over to Geico and save a bunch of do-re-mi. Save an extra 15% when you switch by October 7th. Just visit geico.com to learn more at geico.com. All right, Stephen Dubner and Angela Duckworth are waiting for us. We will bid adieu to Bryan and Gina and say hi to Stephen and Angela right after this. Here we go. Stephen Dubner, Angela Duckworth have joined the podcast. No Stupid Questions, that's the name of their podcast, explores the weird and wonderful ways in which humans behave, and new episodes are available every Monday on Apple Podcasts and Spotify as well. Stephen, of course, from Freakonomics, and Angela, for sure, from Grit. So good, let's solve all of the world's problems. Here we go.
Great. We actually already solved them. So,
you did?
Okay, we're done.
Yeah.
See you later. Nice talking to you.
I'm a big fan of grit. I really feel like that's what's missing from a lot of young people. I'm a broken record about just sort of hard work and determination and all that kind of stuff. And so maybe we can just start with that. Maybe we can start with grit and how it factors in and pertains to raising kids. Like I have a couple of 14-year-old twins, boy, girl, and I'm like to instill a little grit, but let's just start with that broad subject. What is grit?
Well,
How would we define grit?
I would define grit as the combination of having passion for a really long-term goal, something that might take years or decades, even sometimes a lifetime to accomplish. And then also perseverance to work really, really hard at that same goal. So passion and perseverance for especially long-term goals. That's what I call grit. And I study it because I do think it is a common denominator of high achievers, no matter what it is that you're trying to achieve. So
it is a universal quality that can be applied to really almost any facet of our society, and certainly any job. And we all know it. We all know the people that have it. Sadly, we know the people that don't have it. Stephen, how are you on the grit? On the grit-o-meter? Where would you be if 10 was Jocko Willink or somebody like that, or somebody just got up at 4 a.m. and swam 1,000 laps and ran up a hill, or all the famous guys and gals in the past that have grit? Where would you be?
Yeah, so Angela and I met a few years ago when we had her on Freakonomics Radio to talk about grit, and we went over this very question, and I rated myself, I think I ended up rating myself roughly an 8 on a scale of 10, but then Angela persuaded me that I was maybe comparing myself to, like I was envisioning comparing myself to the people who are super, super, super gritty. And that maybe I'm actually a little bit higher because I don't totally suck. I'm not as lazy as I think I am. I sometimes think of myself as being pretty lazy, but when I actually look and keep score at the end of the day or at the end of the week, like how much I work and how hard I work, especially on things that aren't succeeding, I think I'm pretty gritty. But I will tell you this, and this is what I am most interested in about grit, is how do you get grit if you don't have it? Because as a kid, I can't say I had a great work ethic or was particularly gritty. Like I quit a lot of stuff. If there was something I really enjoyed, I would do it endlessly. But if it was something I didn't enjoy or I wasn't good at, I was like, next. And so I know that Angela talks about grit, being this combo of passion and perseverance, and that you can only really have perseverance for something that you're passionate about. But to me, the secret sauce here, like the big mystery, and this is a lot of what we explore, honestly on Freakonomics Radio, but on No Stupid Questions too, is how you can, I hate this language about hack and, all these shortcuts, but like basically how you can get better at doing stuff. That's what I'm interested in. Not just for my kids or for your kids, Adam, but for myself, I feel we're all works in progress, and I want to keep learning how to get better at stuff. So really, this new podcast we made is just so I can cheat and pick Angela's brain and try to get a little grittier.
Well, let's talk grit with Angela, obviously. And also, I want to address, and I want to know what Angela's thought on this is feeling like there's a lazy person trapped inside a gritty person's body. I totally identify with that. I've talked to guys like Dennis Prager, the radio show host, and he says all the time, I am lazy by nature. That's why I work so hard. It's a constant, it's like, it's a relationship that some people have with sobriety. It's like, I got to go to a meeting every night. Otherwise I'll drink a bathtub full of gin and get on the roof with a crossbow. Like it's it's a job that they literally overcompensate for feeling like there's a lazy person trapped inside of them. I feel the same way. Do you feel that way, Angela, or is that a real thing?
I do not feel that way. I do not feel like even that there is the hint of laziness. So here's what I'm hearing though, right? Is that there is some standard of hard work that you hold yourself to. Otherwise, you just wouldn't care, right? Like you just you know, continue to lie on the couch and not get off of it. And so you have to like fight that and then do it. But my guess is, just looking at what you've done, and I know Stephen well enough, not only just looking at what he's done, but, having, been a collaborator, that neither of you are anything close to lazy, right? That you're not 40-hour-a-week people either. Is that right? I mean, first, let me just start with that, Adam. Adam, is that correct, that you're not somebody who
Adam puts out more than 40 hours of podcasts a week alone.
There's a couple things. It's not really of are you a lazy person by nature or not? It's that, do you feel like a lazy person? And almost like there's people who exercise all the time because when they look in the mirror, they see like a heavy set person looking back at them, but they're not. Yeah. They're in good shape. We call it body dysmorphic disorder, but I may have a lazy dysmorphic disorder, which is like,
you maybe have
I look in the mirror and I see a lazy guy looking back at me and I think, oh, you better outwork your lazy ass this week.
Right. Like you get up earlier tomorrow, work later. Well, I think it's very related to Stephen rating himself an 8 out of 10 on grit. It's like, by what comparison, like to what standard? I mean, maybe he has the same thing you do, right? And you have this warped image of yourself, which other people might say, are you kidding me? You're incredibly hardworking and gritty, but you don't feel that way. Does that, because I do find, by the way, people at the top of the grit scale tend to judge themselves quite hard and always holding themselves to a higher and higher and higher standard.
It's also a situation where the people you are aware of or that you have relationships with or what have you, or, Jimmy Kimmel or guys like that who obviously would be off the charts in the work ethic. But to me, he's someone to compare myself to. It wasn't. Now, if I was back on a construction site in North Hollywood and comparing myself to those assholes I work with, then I would look at myself differently. So it's like, sort of who's traveling in your group. And Stephen, you probably have a high achieving group that you're traveling with. So you're comparing yourself to those people.
Right. And I realize that's my mistake. You should hang out with losers and lazy people and then you'll feel relatively awesome. So
you'll feel great. You won't be great, but you'll feel great. Here's a way, when psychological surveys, when behavioral scientists ask people to, rate themselves, they're always thinking that you're rating yourself against like humanity, right? Mm-hmm. Like which you're not. You're rating yourself against some peer group that's probably not at all the way somebody else is rating, because they have a different peer group. But here's the way to do it. When's the last time you went to the DMV to renew your license, right? Yes. That's basically a random sample of, at least American adults.
Right. I'm in 11 now.
Okay. Well, yeah. So if you just remember sitting in that room, you're like, okay, because everyone needs to renew their license. That might help you guys out. But I do think having this kind of almost unapproachable standard, this, as soon as you like achieve one thing, you're like looking up, not down. I think that's actually part of what drives gritty people.
Okay.
Right?
But can I just say, no offense to the three of us, but the three of us now kind of sound like we're humble bragging.
Yes. I know this is
like I think
it's actually
big,
just
like,
bragging.
Oh, I'm only an 8, but I know that I'm really like an 11.
All right.
Well, humble bragging or just
I don't mean
bragging.
to trash us because we're 3 decent humans, I think, but I do think that what Angela's doing, Adam, seriously, is really important work in her research and in this thing called the character lab that she has. Because like, if grit is valuable, which almost all of us agree it is, right? Then you ask like, where does it come from? Angela will tell you a lot of hers comes from her family, both culturally and genetically, or hereditarily, I guess we should say, right? This Chinese family that was like, what are you talking about? You're not going to work for 6 hours on this thing. Of course you are. And we all know that families and environments and so on contribute to that. But to me, the big question is, if a kid or an adult, whatever, doesn't have the environment, that Angela lucked into. I mean, no offense to you, Angela, you were born into a great circumstance. I feel like I was born into a family that, very different from yours, but pretty good. But if you don't have that, how do you get it yourself, especially when you're still a young person? That to me is an incredibly valuable and almost heartbreaking question because, I'm not worried about us.
Right. And you're not even worried about Adam's 14-year-old twins.
No, I'm not. Because any dad who's worried enough to worry about
and Adam's
them,
not worried about
they're
Adam's
fine.
14. No, I think you're right. So let me paint a picture of what I think like the ideal conditions for development are. Probably for most things, honestly, and not just grit, but I'll try to be a little more specific about like what we would want for young people at age 14 or so, or even younger, is lots of opportunities to try out lots of different things. And by the way, I'm going to paint a picture of kids doing what you did, Stephen, which is quit things, right? So like Will Shortz, people think of, crossword editor for the New York Times. I mean, it is true. He discovered very early in life that he wanted to be basically a puzzle master, unusual career, and he discovered this unusually young. But even he tried out things like guitar, etc., that he quit. And that's actually what you want. You would want to wave a magic wand so that all of these kids around the world, children and teenagers, would have lots of opportunities to try things out and actually paradoxically, coming from me, maybe to quit them when they have gotten far enough to know that they want to do something else. And when you said when you were a kid, Stephen, that you quit lots of things, but you worked very hard, even obsessively on the things that kind of stuck with you, right? That like, I don't know, rang your bell or whatever. Like that's actually what I see in gritty people, that they quit a lot of things. They go from one to the other, especially when they're young, but they do have increasingly I guess like strong constitution to stick with the things that start to stick with them.
Yeah, I wonder, Adam, I don't mean to ask questions of
Go ahead.
The other guest on your show. Do you mind if I ask her one question?
Please.
So when you talk to all these high achievers, when you were writing Grit and so on, I'm curious, I think you did write about this, I just don't remember, but it reminds me of the three of us now kind of assessing ourselves maybe a little bit lower and that humble brag of the thing. But on the flip side of that, I do wonder how much self-awareness is a factor in grit or success of any kind, which is being able to really look at yourself and see, yes, I'm really good at what I do. Or, yeah, I really bust my ass at this, but here's an opportunity I missed, or here's something I didn't think through, or here's where I could have gone further. And that itself being a major component of success. Is that the case or not really?
Yeah. And so one of the reasons why it's hard to give a straight or at least a short answer to like, okay, what do all kids need so that they have the opportunity to develop, something like grit, is that it's more than one thing. I got yelled at, actually. I had a very, very, very famous professor of psychology who I used to work with when I worked for as an undergraduate. He was, I think, the chair of the psychology department at Harvard. And his name is Jerry Kagan. And I caught up with him a few years ago. So I was all grown up. I had become a professor myself. And, he had heard about grit, and we were talking on the phone, and he was kind of yelling at me. It was like listening to all caps with exclamation marks. And I think his beef was that grit requires many things. It's like complicated, right? So it's not just that you need the exploration of multiple interest possibilities and you got to sample them and quit them. And that's part of developing grit. Also developing self-awareness, especially an ability to be self-critical. You're absolutely right, Stephen. That's also a part of what you need to develop grit. But then, you also need role models and mentors. Like so it's a long recipe. And I think Jerry said that maybe it was such a long recipe that it may not have been a useful recipe. But I do think this is kind of the phenotype, if you will, of a high achiever. So when we start reverse engineering, like what are all the things that these people have that enable them to stick with things for so long with such an obsessive single-mindedness, you do find that it's like more than one factor.
I'd like to discuss self-esteem and how this factors or folds into grit as well, because I'm starting to worry that too many people have too high a self-esteem. And it's funny because you look at self-esteem like vitamin C, like, well, you can never have enough vitamin C. I think you can. I think you'll get the runs at a certain point. And I've found
the psychological runs.
I've kind of studied, like I work with comedians, and comedians are really moody and temperamental and kind of nutty and finicky and difficult. And I noticed that Jay Leno was probably the easiest of all the comedians to deal with. And he sat in the studio a couple of weeks ago, and I said, Jay, I'm just kind of asking, like, why are you willing to do? He'll hop in any dragster, he'll jump in any crop dusting biplane. I'll call him up and go, Jay, come over there, and he'll come over. Or I'll go to his shop and just walk
call
in.
Him. This is great.
It's easy. And he just goes, I have low self-esteem. Like I just whatever. I don't have any self-esteem. And I go,
he's surprised when people are inviting him to the annual crop dusting.
He understands that he's rich. And he understands that he's successful, he's famous, but he doesn't have high self-esteem. He has this kind of shucks, regular guy or whatever. And I've heard people talk to him. Like I've been on the set of The Tonight Show, and I've heard like his head writer during rehearsal go, hey, Jay, you're doing it wrong and you're screwing up the joke. Now get it right, otherwise we're going to cut the joke. And I sit there like I hold my breath like, oh my God, if you said that to half the other guys I've worked with in this town, you'd be fucking fired. And Jay would be like, oh, well, how do you want me to do it? And he'd go, well, you're hitting the wrong beats. And he'd go, oh, okay, sorry, I'll try it again. And that's the no self-esteem or low. And so I started thinking about groups with really high self-esteem, and I realized I don't think they're doing as well as low self-esteem groups. And I started thinking about all the Jewish writers I've hung out with. It's since I got, when I got out of construction, there were no Jews in construction. When I got into show business, there were a lot of Jews. And they're the most self-deprecating group in the world. I've never hung out with more guys going, I'm so bad at fixing things. You call the guy. I don't even pop the hood of the car. I don't even know where the engine is. Believe me, I am lame. I'm like they're really self-deprecating in a funny way, but hard on themselves. So I started.
Thank God. Yeah.
I got off a construction site where it was all Gentiles and Mexicans, and I got into a writer's room, and it was all Jewish men. And no group was more self-deprecating than Jewish men. Like, I'm so bad at this, or that was so lame.
They weren't just joking either. It was.
They joke about it, but it's like, I couldn't change a light bulb in my apartment if you gave me $10,000 in an hour. I couldn't. I'm so bad. But even when they write a bad joke, they'd go, that was lame. It's stupid.
All right. Given that you have two 14-year-olds,
I'm not Jewish, but I'm Italian. But I also noticed, so the groups that I noticed that were very hard on themselves were Asians and Jews. The Asians for kind of different reasons, but they were hard on themselves. They're. I don't mean negative. I just mean
right.
Tough.
And you don't mean depressed.
No, I don't mean depressed.
You just mean like tough on themselves, right? Like judging themselves by very tough standards.
Right.
Is that one way to put it?
Yeah. And then I started thinking, well, wait a minute. The two groups that are really kicking ass in this country are Asians and Jews. So I thought, well, maybe there's something, because I know a bunch of people that feel really good about themselves and are horrible and don't do anything.
Yeah. Okay. Well, this is a very dangerous question to ask a Jew and an Asian, or at least it's dangerous for us to answer. Like, look, this is what self-esteem is. Self-esteem is your feeling of worth. Like, do you feel like you're on an equal level with others? Do you think you're, of value, like in the world? If I had two 14-year-old twins, I would want them to have some threshold level of self-esteem. Actually, having like really low self-esteem is highly associated with like bad things like depression. So yeah, I don't think you want your kids to be in the basement on self-esteem, but I think you have a very good intuition, which is probably that, beyond some threshold level, more isn't necessarily better. But here's something that I think you do want. First of all, you want humility. Mm-hmm. Like that's what when you describe people who like Jay Leno saying like, oh, how can I make this joke better? What do I need to do? That's humility. And you can have self-esteem and humility at the same time, because they're not, they're not opposites of each other. And like, let me just throw one other word in here. And I know it's kind of jargony, but it's actually the word that psychologists use. It's called self-efficacy. So if I had two 14-year-old twins, I'd want them to have some threshold level of self-esteem, but I'd really want them to have a lot of self-efficacy. Self-efficacy isn't believing that you're worthwhile. Self-efficacy is believing that if you tried, you can do something. And I don't know that there's a lot of downside to even being 10 out of 10 in self-efficacy, because, when you get to 10 out of 10 on self-efficacy, basically the responsibility is on you to then go try.
I think there's this movement. I think what Adam's identifying, though, Angie, maybe I'm wrong, Adam, you can tell me, is this movement for like the last, 20, 30 years, like especially with very young children in schools, this idea that like, let's tell the children they're awesome at everything, and then they will be awesome at everything. In other words, self-esteem is like the fuel that you need to be good at stuff, as opposed to the old model, which was, no, you deserve no self-esteem until you've busted your ass and have gotten really good. So obviously somewhere in the middle is better. But I do think, just as most corrections are overcorrections, I think like the hard ass style of parenting that we can all agree was probably a little bit too hard ass for, a couple millennia, like a lot of beatings and so on. It was replaced by a way too easy, which I saw a lot when my kids are now teenage, college age. But I saw it a lot when they were younger, which is the whole school would be geared around like telling the kids how wonderful and awesome and chosen they were. And it led to a bunch of kids feeling really entitled. And, it's...
Is it possible that like that a school, a teacher, say, could give a kid a sense that they're valuable people, like they're worthy of being respected and loved, but that is totally separate from like, you already know how to do this.
Totally.
This essay is already great. Because I think you want to, and that's like nuanced, right? But like, I think that's what you're trying to do as a parent too, right? You don't want your kid to think that you love them 7 out of 10. You want them to think you love them 10 out of 10. But that doesn't mean that everything that they do, like every single act, every deed is already perfect.
Right. But that's like, to me, the whole point of unconditional love, of parental love, which is I love you despite the fact that you suck at things right now. And because I can tell you that you suck at things right now, I can actually help you get better at things. That's, to me, by the way, I'm Jewish and I did construction.
Wow.
I only did it for a summer. It was so fucking hard.
How'd that pyramid come out?
I didn't know Jews didn't do construction. That's a new cultural...
There's a lot we don't do, Angie. I'll give you the list later.
Not out in SoCal. Well, no, it was the thing that was very interesting culturally, and it's why I don't mind stereotypes. They're earned. I am the same person I was, when I was 30, 29. I was on a construction site from high school and beyond. I've just worked as a laborer, and then I became a carpenter. But nobody ever mistook me for a Jew. And then as soon as I got into comedy, everyone thought I was Jewish. And I didn't change a thing about myself. Right. It just became Jewish when I wrote jokes. And the hair was the same and the look was the same. It was just the profession changed. But I think what I'm talking about, and maybe what we're all kind of dancing around a little bit with self-esteem, is self-esteem that is earned is good. Self-esteem that's grafted onto every 9-year-old is bad. It's just, you cannot just hand people self-esteem.
I took I have 2 daughters. The younger one's named Lucy, and she decided she wanted to run track. I guess she must have been, I don't know, maybe 10 or 11, right? And we show up, and there's 8 kids in the meet, and she's 8th out of 8. And she comes back to where I'm sitting with a ribbon, right? and it said 8th, so I don't think you need to give all 8 kids in an 8-person race a ribbon. She was also on this little soccer
Did you
team.
tear up the ribbon or burn it? And
You know what? Even at that age, I mean, she was what, 10? I was like, this is like a New Yorker cartoon. It's like, I just started laughing, and she laughed too, because she recognized even that young age. She was like, this is absurd. Like, I can't believe I just got a ribbon. So I didn't have to rip it up. It was just a object of humor.
I had the exact same experience, which is my son came in 8th in like, I guess he was doing like long distance stuff. And he came in 8th. And when he came in 8th, I said to my wife, we were sitting up in the bleachers of the high school, the cross country meet. I said, okay, I'll go get the car. And she said, no, we have the podium ceremony.
Yeah, exactly.
I said, is she going to stand on a cookie sheet, or are we going to dig a hole for him to stand in? And he's like, no, there's the podium. There's the ceremony with the podium. I'm like, yeah, the podium is 1st, 2nd, and 3rd. He's 8th. It's like, oh no, we got the ceremony. I'm like, okay. All right.
It's not a trend that I like. But I don't think it's the same thing as like telling kids that they're, like, you know what I'm saying? Like, great coaches and parents, they make kids feel great about themselves as people, but they separate the kid as a person from like the action that they just did. And actually, there's a lot of scientific research showing, like, if you're praising your kid, it's so much better to focus your attention and your feedback, I mean, both positive and negative, frankly, on like what they're doing, right? Like, if they bake a cake, don't talk about them as a person and their worth and whatever. Just talk about the cake. It's like a little dry, actually, like needs more frosting, but focus on the process, not the person. That's the thumbnail sketch of the science on it.
How does this work from an educational standpoint? Like, what could we implement into the school systems? I feel like I just feel like they're so archaic.
Were you a good student, Adam, when you were, middle school? Like, you were 14?
Let's recap. I left high school. I walked onto a construction site and I picked up garbage for a living.
So not such a good student.
You may want to pull up a trash can to throw up into, because the Asian mom in you is going to want to heave when I tell you that I never took the SATs.
Ever?
No, did not take the SATs. College was not in the plan, so why bother with the charade of the SATs? I did not take the SATs.
You learned how to pronounce charade.
And that is very important.
So that's something.
I did not take the SATs. I never took algebra in college. I didn't go to college. In high school or junior high, I took math. In high school, I took something called high school math, but not algebra.
That's no frills.
I was a ceramics major, which is paying great dividends today, in case anyone stops me on the street
career.
Wants to know the difference between a coil pot and a slab pot. I'm all answers. And I finished with a 1.7 GPA, but you have to back out 6. I went to high school for 3 years. There were 6 semesters of baseball and football in there, which was just an automatic A. So if you backed out 6 A's,
you were getting negative
a 1.7 GPA, and I failed biology and driver's ed, not driver's training, but driver's ed. Those are the 2 classes.
That's impressive.
I failed, and I never got my diploma because I owed the book room money for a history book I never returned, so I never physically got my diploma. So in terms of education, I don't know that you could do any worse than that.
Why were you a bad student?
That's exactly what I was going to ask. What were you doing with all your time? Same question.
I had kind of a hippie mom in the 70s. And I went to what was called sort of an alternative school where you kind of learn to, free range, and you didn't have to buckle down and learn anything or do anything. And so from basically 0 to the 5th grade, I didn't learn to spell or write or read. So I couldn't read or spell. So at some point, I entered the public school system. And when I entered the public school system, I was like the character Nell from the movie, like a feral child who'd been raised in the woods. And I just sort of walked in. I remember weird things, like a bell rang and someone looked at me and went, "We better get going. We're going to be tardy." And I was like, "What's tardy?" By the way, tardy doesn't exist really anywhere except for the school.
Anywhere except for report cards.
Right,
I know.
the bell.
No one ever says
And I was
tardy.
like, I don't know what any of this is. And I couldn't read and I couldn't write. And so I just sat in the back of the class, but I didn't want anyone to know I couldn't read and couldn't write because I was horribly ashamed and embarrassed. So I would just kind of sit there and nod. And like when they handed me stuff, I would pretend like I was reading it. You know, if somebody said, "Hey, isn't this a funny comic?" and they would hand it to me, I'd look at it and I'd try to time how long would a person who knew how to read look at this comic. And then at some point I'd go, "That's funny. Yeah, it's a good one." And I'd hand it back. And that's how I just went through. I went all the way through junior high. I went through high school. That's how I got through. I never did.
Then how did you like turn, this narrative doesn't sound like it's going to end very well, but you're in the middle of a pretty good life. So like then, what happened?
I learned a lot about grit through sports and about kind of overachieving, playing football and really working hard to make my way onto the varsity team. And then when I got onto the construction side, I learned a lot. I used a lot more of the grit from like, I don't want to be the guy digging ditches and cleaning up garbage. I want to be a carpenter, So I really worked hard and used a lot of grit, to work my way up to being a carpenter and to having a, truck and not having to sweat it out, in a ditch all day and be inside putting on crown molding or something a little more interesting. And then I just went, this life, it just sounds like a lot of hard work and a lot of people that I don't really want to work with. Like the guys aren't very interesting and the conversation's not fascinating or riveting.
Not scintillating?
No, and you didn't get paid. The job of carpentry was you didn't get paid if you didn't work. So if it rained on a Wednesday and the job site was closed, you didn't get paid for Wednesday. You didn't get paid. Right. You didn't get paid for Christmas. There's no holidays. There was no insurance. There was no nothing. It was just show up, work, $13 an hour, however many hours we worked that week. And no dental, no medical, no nothing. And I just sort of looked at it and I went, what's this going to be like when you're 45? Like you're 23, fine, shits and giggles. But man, when you're older, what is this going to be like? And I kind of did the math where it's like, well, you work your way up to foreman, and you'll get a bigger truck. But I was like, yeah, but you're still going to be on this job site with these dudes, and what do you want to do? And so I was like insanely pragmatic. I was like, I cannot fill out an application. Like I physically could not fill out an application. I'm not going to succeed in any job that involves paperwork or organization. I cannot work in a traditional environment. I could work on a construction site, or maybe I could do comedy, but I couldn't work in an attorney's office or anything.
Be an accountant.
I didn't have any
number of things.
I couldn't spell. Yeah. I didn't have any skills. I didn't have any organization as you would learn it. And I didn't have any of that stuff. So I was like, well, you're funny. So what does that mean? And I thought, I don't really know what it means. It just means you're going to start working on comedy while you're doing construction, and we'll see what happens. And so I started taking groundlings classes while I was working construction, and I didn't know what I was doing, and they were telling me like, yeah, you're funny, but you don't know how to act, so take an acting class, and then you could come back and take the intermediate class. And I was like, okay, where's the acting class? They go over there on Ventura Boulevard, blah, blah, blah. I'd go, okay. I go take the money I was making swinging a hammer, which was, I was making $12 an hour. I didn't have insurance for my truck or anything, and I was just handing it over to the groundlings or to the acting class, or I'd take free classes. I'd take classes in churches and basements and everywhere. And I was like, I don't know what's going on, but I better learn about comedy because I already know about carpentry and it sucks. So
were you more driven than the other aspiring comedians that were like in your groundling group or these other, I mean, did you work harder? Were you more intense? Were you more obsessive? I
had a higher level of discomfort. Most of the people at the Groundlings were college educated. Everyone was a college graduate. They seemed to come from some semblance of a family, and they had some place with air conditioning they could kind of go back to or something. And I didn't have any of that. They drove Jettas and I drove Datsun pickup trucks, with a bench seat. And so it's like they had a credit card. I didn't have a credit card. They had a sort of a life for themselves that was a little more normal. So they could like go out to dinner and see a movie and turn the air on in their car and, so on and so forth. So I had a little more fire in my belly. I had a little more desperation of I got to hurry up and I got to figure this out. And you guys, some of these guys had dads who were attorneys or, had businesses, family businesses. They could go into the business or something. I didn't have a family fallback. I was just going back onto the construction site. So I had a lot more desperation.
So since your kids are going to grow up nothing like the way you grew up, like, right? I mean, like, what, how do you think they'll turn out?
I think if they find something they're passionate about, and I don't want to sound cliche, but I just mean, when it comes to like comedy, the backgrounds are so varied. I mean, they're people, Conan O'Brien's parents were like professors and he went to Harvard,
He went to Harvard.
There's no further from mine. Even Jimmy's background is very different than my background. And so is every other comedian. We all know, I don't know, I'm sure Dave Chappelle's background is much different than Conan O'Brien's background, but they agree on comedy. You know what I mean? And that's what kind of separates. So when you have a passion for something, then that'll pull from all different directions and like all different walks of life into that passion because you just can't get more diverse than comedy. If you really look at how many different backgrounds there are and how they all ended up in the same place. So I just want my kids to have a passion. And then I think they'll have the motivation.
I agree. So if you talk about grit as passion and perseverance, a lot, yes, I'm an Asian mom, but I don't consider myself a tiger mom. And one reason why is that I think passion comes first. And kids, when Stephen talks about like, oh, he worries about like other people's kids who don't have opportunities, I worry that I worry about all the kids who don't have a chance to try out stuff and like give up on it and then try out another thing and go on a field trip and then eventually find something that you love so much that you'll never, ever get bored of it, which I bet you would feel like that about comedy, that like, it's never going to be like done. It's never like all the problems are going to be solved or like there's no nuances or like people aren't doing new creative things that you want to hear about. So really what kids need is an opportunity to develop passion. They need a little work ethic and perseverance too. But mostly when you're 14, you should be getting your interest sparked in different ways and like figuring that out.
I also think that if you have that work ethic and the grit we speak about, that you can develop it from sports or playing an instrument or some other discipline, swimming, cross-country running, you take that, you're not going to make a living doing cross-country running or swimming or probably playing an instrument or playing football like I did, but I was able then just to transfer it. So I just went, I'm going to take this thing I learned about hard work and overcoming and sort of pushing through the pain and discomfort, and I'm just going to transfer that onto.
Not everyone does
thing.
though. That's it's very interesting that I think that's exactly why parents send their kids to, music lessons and join teams, right? I mean, not many parents are thinking like, oh, my daughter or son's going to become a professional violinist or like a professional athlete. I think that's exactly why we think that they're going to learn lessons about life that transfer. But what's interesting to me is like not everybody does transfer. In fact, human beings by default, we really struggle to transfer like generalizable lessons. So there are plenty of kids who don't transfer those insights. Why do you think you did? Like, did somebody point it out to you, or did you just sort of like see life? You saw what you were doing on the field, and you like just drew the parallel by yourself.
I think first thing, we probably have to agree that there's a kind of a baseline of intelligence that you need that I don't know how you measure it, but we'll just call it a sort of universal intelligence that lets you get from here to there. Like just that's a kind of I had a baseline intelligence, even though I was completely uneducated. And
it's not reflected in your grades.
Right.
You were thinking. I was thinking well.
Yes. I come from chaos. My family was a mess. Everything was broken down and poor, and the grades were through the basement floor. But I had a kind of a baseline intelligence that would help to navigate me into making better decisions if I didn't have that baseline of intelligence. I don't know where it came from, but it was just a sort of a base. And I realized a lot of the guys I grew up with who came from similar circumstances and ended up, with the broken families on the construction sites, they lacked that sort of base, like that baseline intelligence that would let them, it wouldn't propel them to the next thing. It would just let them go to the next thing. It would not prevent them from getting to the next endeavor.
Right.
But they just didn't have that base. And that's then becomes the most unsolvable Rubik's Cube ever, which is if you don't have that base, how do you then apply those lessons? Yeah, and also it's a weird thing, which is two of my closest friends were really successful as really young people. One of them worked at Kentucky Fried Chicken for like 5 years, saved up like $3,000 and bought his own car. And I was like really impressed by that. Like when he was 17, I was like, he worked there and I wasn't working. I wasn't saving any money. I had another friend that had like a paper route, saved up, had a bunch of money in the bank. A bunch of money was $1,800, but I was worth $10 in, total if you liquidated everything. And I was like really impressed by it. And those guys both got started young doing that. And they both ended up being failures, basically. Like they didn't.
I hope they're listening.
They just, they didn't transfer any of that into. We're talking about like transferring the positive.
Right. And were they like not thinking? Were they like, so when you say baseline of intelligence, I mean, like it sounds like you thought and you thought well, right? Like just to make it into a verb.
I thought,
right?
I thought like, well, things must change in order for me to get from here to there. And I need to do a lot of changing.
And they were not asking questions like that.
No, they were not asking, like, how can I
another
evolve?
$3,000 and another car.
What did the paper delivery guy do with his money?
He probably bought a truck or a car or something, outside in high school or what have you. And, these guys end up just working schlubs, regular working guys. I mean, they're not, they're not in prison. And I don't, I'm not calling them losers. Like, I know it sounds like a real pejorative, but I just mean is they had a lot of potential and they didn't really end up utilizing that potential. I probably had maybe less potential, but was able to sort of transfer it and grow it.
I think a lot of this is a habit. My dad raised me so my parents weren't actually classic Tiger parents. Like they never asked me for my report card. I mean, they were just busy. And so they had their hands full with other things. So they weren't classic Tiger parents. But I will tell you one thing that my mom and especially my dad did. He just modeled for me because this is the way he lived it. He was just always thinking. And you watch television and you could watch television or you could think about what's going on and that to me is what I hear about. Despite your poor grades, you were thinking well, and maybe the habit of thinking is pretty much what intelligence is. That's a little deep, and I know we're running out of time. But
no,
anyway.
I think you're right in that a constant, I always call it like a sort of a constant calibrating. It's just a constant calibration, like they do with the radar dish on the side of your house. Like, I mean, if you ever see those guys adjust that DirecTV dish, like they have an instrument, it's like 2 clicks, of latitude and half a click of longitude. And it's like you're watching the TV and you can make it out, but it starts getting really clear with just little constant subtle clicks, and I was always in the mindset of calibration. Where are you?
Right.
What don't you know? What should you know? Where are your weaknesses? Where are your strengths?
Is this thing that I think I know really true? Maybe it's not true. I think that is a habit. I don't think you have to be doing that. You could also not be doing that, or you could be doing that very little. And I think if your 2 14-year-old twins, get a little bit of work ethic, lots of opportunities to try things out so they can find a passion. And if they get into the habit of basically like thinking and thinking well, I think that would be okay.
Yeah, maybe. I also think that too many people think with themselves in mind. Like they're looking, everything they factor in factors themselves in heavily. So they're like driving down the freeway. It's like, hey, that asshole just cut me off. He's cut me off. It's like he didn't cut you off. He just cut a car off that you're in. You know what I mean?
Yes.
He doesn't know who you are.
They need to take a third person perspective.
Right. And your boss fired you because your boss is a dick. It's like he fired you because you're a worker who's not doing a good job for him or her. That's why you're fired. It's pretty straightforward. Like I would argue and ask, could you remove yourself from the equation more often when it comes to decision making? You'll have a clear path if you back yourself out. Steven?
Yeah.
I wonder if the paradox, though, is if you've got high self-esteem, you have a really hard time removing yourself from it. Like, there's all this research that I love in psychology and in economics about the role that luck and randomness play in life. And it's huge. And we don't like to admit that because we like to, we like to admit that bad things are the result of luck and good things are the result of our own thing. So yeah, it's just so interesting to me to hear you describe, your life story. And like, one part of me just gets pissed and wants to say, why didn't someone say or notice, like, wait a minute, this kid's in 5th grade and not reading, and he's plainly bright enough to be reading. Maybe, who knows, maybe you had some, mild dyslexia, whatever. I have no idea. But like, that pisses me off. But then on the flip side, I think, well, you got on this kind of alternate route, right? So you're in school, but you're not doing what the kids who are trying to be good at school are doing. And in a way, that sounds like it was the training for you to become what you ultimately became by being an observer and by calibrating all the time as you described it. And that is removing yourself from the, I'm not thinking about how am I going to do on this test, because it sounds like you didn't give a shit how you would do on the test, but you started to become a student of human nature. And look, that's what you ended up parlaying into what you do. I'm not saying that was a guaranteed success. I'm sure a lot of people could have been in your situation educationally and have it turned out really poorly. The thing that I hear both of you guys saying, like when I think about self-esteem versus whatever encouragement, to me, what's intoxicating in life is accomplishment. Just the sense of like, it can be an incredibly small thing. Like Angie and I were talking about this on our show not long ago. My dad died when he was pretty young, and he had all kinds of physical illnesses and some mental health stuff. And he, when he was at his lowest, he just had this mantra of move the muscles, just get up and do anything physically to kind of break this routine. And when I first started reading about this stuff that he had been inspired by, I thought, I don't understand how something so simple, so small can be useful. But then the more I read and the more I saw in myself, when I would get down, I would see that, yeah, sometimes it's literally the act of picking up the dirty dishes and marching them to the sink. And maybe you'll wash it, maybe you won't. But you get that tiny hit of whatever it is, dopamine, Angie, you could tell us, whatever it is that you get from
dopamine, probably.
From fulfilling the thing that you set out to fulfill. And the more I learned about psychology and so on, the more I see that our minds are never happier, are never more engaged than when we have that little mental checklist of the things upcoming that we want to accomplish. They can be big, they can be small. And that's what I feel is important for everyone at any level, is to get that sense of accomplishment, because, I think it's very popular these days to think about, wouldn't it be great if I could be given something? And, for the first 5 minutes, and then for the 80 years after that, no, it's really not. And that to me is the riddle, the puzzle of how to kind of sell people, or to get people to buy into the notion that accomplishment on any level, on any dimension, is amazingly good for you and therefore good for everybody else. And it is intoxicating, and it does have a crescendo. It keeps building. So, when I hear your story, Adam, I think back to my childhood. I'm sure everybody listening to you thinks back to their childhood and thinks, yeah, I wasn't very good or very gritty or very successful or blah, blah, blah. But then these small steps you accomplish, and then you look back and you think, man, I really know how to do stuff now. It's like, to me, it's one of the joys of being older, is like you have the perspective to say, yeah, I would not have been able to do the book that I'm going to write this year. I would not have been able to do that when I was 25 years old. I did not have the ability to plan it out, to think it through, to chunk it up into goals and so on. And that's, like, to me, that's inspiring. I love to read stories of that success. On the other hand, I don't like all like the success porn that's going around now. Like a lot of podcasts and a lot of,
I have never heard that expression.
I hadn't either, but it's good.
Well, but like whole sections of the bookstore are basically like, it reminds me a little bit of the worried well. That's another phrase, like, the doctors are getting clogged up by the people who have enough access and money to healthcare to come in with every hangnail and every pimple and so on. And I get it, but the people who are obsessed with more success, I think, is blocking out a little bit the idea that we need to make success more accessible for more people. And part of that is hearing stories that are unlike ours and figuring out how to basically game the system, how to help everybody get drunk on accomplishment of whatever kind.
Success porn, I was thinking, like, literally ends with a money shot, unlike regular porn, which is figurative. I want to, as we wrap up, I want to drill down, and I hate when people say drill down, but move the plates. You gave the example of moving the plates. I have a fine example of when I sort of switched my way of thinking, and it had to do with ceramics and plates and coffee mugs. And literally, it was meaning a literal example of becoming successful for doing the most mundane, nothing task. I'll share that story with you in 1 second. First, let me hit Bet Online. No shortage of action at our exclusive partner, betonline.ag. Sports are coming back. UFC, NASCAR, boxing, soccer. Bet Online has the best odds on upcoming games, and if you need more, Bet Online has simulated NFL, NBA, and UFC daily. Also, live casino games, poker tournaments, and the best props in the business. Visit betonline.ag. Use the promo code podcast1 and use your mobile device. You can join, and you'll get a sign-up bonus. Visit betonline.ag, our exclusive partner, Podcast1. Don't forget, promo code podcast1 for your sign-up bonus today. Bet Online, your online sportsbook experts. It is betonline.ag. Yeah, I wrote in a book, my autobiography, Not Taco Bell Material. For me, I used to pull into my house that I rented with my 3 roommates in La Crescenta, California, and my Isuzu Trooper after doing construction all day. And I would look down at the well where your feet go on the passenger side of my Isuzu Trooper, and it would always be the ceramic mug that I left the house with, that I drank the coffee in on the way out to the job site, and then at some point on the way home, it would be rolling around where the footwell for the passenger seat. And I would look at it, and I'd go, you should take that mug inside the house. And then I would think, well, I can't really reach it from here. I'm going to have to go outside, open the door, and get it from that side. And then I thought, yeah, you don't need to bring it in the house. There's other mugs in the house. You'll get it tomorrow. And then I thought, but tomorrow you're going to have 2 mugs rolling around down there, and they may break the handle or they may crack because they're rolling around and they're going to clank together. And I thought, yeah, but if you keep one on the seat and you keep one on the floor, then they won't hit each other. And I was like, yeah, but what if I stop suddenly and the one on the seat? And then I thought to myself, just get the fucking mug. You thought about it way longer than you should have. This is insane. Are you going to go through your life this way? Are you going to bargain with yourself every time there's a nominal task to do? Or are you just going to fucking be one of those people that just starts doing it? And I thought, if you see the mug, grab the mug, and that's it. No more bargaining, no more inner dialogue. And I started doing that. And the second I started not negotiating with myself, I started becoming successful.
So that's the idea of self-awareness, maybe, right? Like, just that kind of like, wait, what am I doing here? What kind of person am I? What kind of person do I want to be? I don't think it's guaranteed. I think you could have like gone through the exact same story, but not had self-awareness. And then that wouldn't have been a turning point.
Right, but Stephen was talking about just sort of bussing the dishes back to the sink.
He had self-awareness when he was doing that, though, right?
Oh, yeah. I just what I'm saying is these little nothing tasks they seem symbolic, but they're way more than symbolic.
And it becomes a habit because after you decide, no, I'm not going to lose this battle, and it was a tiny battle, then the next battle you're not going to lose is a little bit bigger, and that's how good habits grow. But again, we're the people who've built those habits.
Right.
Right. And then you have kids and then you realize they have to start over. But right. I think that's a lot of parenting, right? Helping kids have those little small wins and those little habits, because like Tuesday is going to depend on Monday and Wednesday is going to depend on Tuesday. I'm totally fine with small wins as opposed to handing out self-esteem. And no offense to either of your kids who are really shitty athletes, it sounds like, but 8th place, I don't think you should get a ribbon.
Well, to be fair to my son, long distance running isn't really even a sport when you're 9. It's just what you do. You know what I mean? Like, all right. The podcast, No Stupid Questions, Stephen Dubner and Angela Duckworth. This has been quite satisfying, and that hour plus flew by in a nanosecond. So I suggest we do this again soon.
That would be great.
Website, you can go to freakonomics.com, and you can also go to angeladuckworth.com as well. It is so satisfying talking to people like yourselves. I really thank you for joining me today.
Thanks, Adam. This was a lot of fun. This was, and I mean, I don't know if you've told these stories about yourself. I know last time I was on, we talked a little bit about your football and stuff and talked about the state of football, but I do think that your reflection on, how you became the person you became. I think these stories, I mean, Angie and I talk about this a lot. Stories are incredibly powerful. Like, you can preach all the like rules of habit making that you want, and most people it's not going to work.
Water through a sieve.
But I hear, I'm never going to forget the story of your freaking coffee mug.
Right. Inspired by
I appreciate that.
Your plate. Thank you, guys. Thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Nice to talk to you.
All right. Thank you. Last but not least, Simply Safe. No one should feel unsafe at home, period. And that's why they invented Simply Safe. Protect your home today. Get free shipping at simplysafe.com. /Adam. All right, Dallas, Texas, Addison Improv coming up this Friday and Saturday, live podcast and stand-up as well. I'm your emotional support animal. It's available. It's back in stock. Go get it. Get the hardcover and get the audio book as well. And just go to adamcarolla.com for all the info. San Antonio, Texas coming up July 31st through August 1st. And until next time, this is Adam Carolla for Gina and Bald and Steven and Angela saying mahalo.